Good afternoon, you guys. Welcome back to Spillin' It.
Yes, welcome back. We have a special guest today, Kate, on our podcast, and she's going to share her incredible story on her two beautiful daughters, Reese and Remy, who are conjoined twins at birth.
Yep.
We can jump right in.
I can't wait to hear this. I cannot wait. So she is local Minnesota. Also, fun story, her brain surgeon was also our brain surgeon for Nevaeh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So fun little fact there.
Yep.
But let's just like go back to, this was your third pregnancy.
Yep.
And you were like, okay, maybe we'll have one more. And then you found out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. We actually, my husband was in the military.
Okay.
So we were traveling around. We lived outside of the state for a few years and came back home, and we're like, we're around family. We have the help. We have the support. Like, I come from a big family, so I wanted to also have a big family, and felt like a third baby would be a great addition. And we ended up finding out we were having two.
Yeah.
So,
were you like,
So we actually went and did the Doppler and an ultrasound.
okay.
And they only found one baby in there.
Oh.
And they kind of were like, well, maybe you're just a little further along. It's a third pregnancy. So, my body is probably like, I know what to do.
Right.
So it was about 17 weeks. We went in for just like a regular check.
Yeah.
And we were doing the Doppler, and the heart rate dropped. And then they couldn't find it for a little bit. So,
And this was at like 20 weeks?
17.
17.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So it happened to be the last week that the ultrasound was in the clinic that we were going to. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, let's just go have an ultrasound done to make sure everything's fine with that heart. And we went into that ultrasound, and the tech was like, well, what did they tell you in that first ultrasound? And I looked at her and I was like, I don't know, the normal stuff. Like what?
They didn't say anything.
Nothing.
You got a baby in there?
Yeah, nothing crazy. And she like scrolled and then scrolled and scrolled, and you could see two heads, but never in the same frame. So we're kind of like looking at it like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And she couldn't really say, they never can. The doctor has to confirm it. And so she did say that it looks like there were twins in there. And again, kind of the way the scan worked, we could kind of notice something like maybe they were connected, but nothing like
you didn't
definitive,
like just jump right to like, they're conjoined.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So then did the doctor come in and go?
Yes. The doctor came in and said they are connected, but we didn't know organs, limbs, none of the details that we were kind of like that immediately goes to your head.
Yeah. Right.
So we had to wait to get into a specialist and have them do an ultrasound and find all the little details. So for a week, we were sitting there kind of like,
oh my goodness,
what is happening? Are they going to survive? Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
So,
did you know where they were conjoined?
No.
Okay.
No.
So fair. So then at 18 weeks, you went and saw a specialist.
Yep.
And did they do an ultrasound again?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
They have high tech equipment, so they did.
Right.
They did a detailed one.
Okay.
So we knew they had their own limbs. We knew they were connected from the chest to their belly button, and kind of went over. We saw surgeons and genetics and like all the people in one day. So it was a big appointment for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you never found out the gender?
No.
To either of them?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's all, because she was just telling us how they were gender neutral names.
Yep.
Because you didn't know.
Yes.
Did you find out with any of your kids?
We did with our first.
Okay.
But we did not with our second, and it was just the best surprise.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's do it again. And
yeah.
We kind of went back and forth with it because of the high risk and the possibility of maybe them not making it. We're like, well, do we find out the gender and give them names and kind of like have that and have look for something positive in it? But we actually, our kids nicknamed them Honey and Sunshine.
Oh, cute.
So we were like, we're going to stick with it. That's
Yes.
what it's
so
going to
cool.
be. Yeah.
What were their ages, your two kids, before when you got pregnant?
Gosh, it's been so long now. Lena was about 4.
Okay.
And Chase was 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you saw all the specialists, and Ethan was doing some like light research on conjoined twins, and
Yep.
it's like 1 in
200,000 or so.
Yes,
right?
1 in 200,000 pregnancies, and then about 50% of those make it to a live birth.
Okay, so
That's wild.
Yeah.
is it typical that one makes it and one doesn't, or it's like
I think it can go both ways.
okay,
They're all
depends.
so different.
Yeah.
But, yeah. If the
Could be
way,
both stillborn, could be
Yeah,
one born,
yeah.
one stillborn.
yeah,
Could be both.
they could be
Yeah.
both born, but then one of them is doing better off than the other, and you have to separate immediately. So
Mhm.
it kind of varies on what organs are connected and how they're conjoined, and
right.
all the little details of where they're at.
I was just gonna ask, like, what was just because just stuff that we've gone through, like I
Yeah.
know, like my feeling of like hearing stuff, like when you got that news, when you guys were in before, and then that week period of time, what was your
Oh,
you
I
and your
spiraled.
husband's feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you Google? Because I am not allowed to Google anymore,
Yes.
but that's what I would do.
Yeah. We were told not to,
Yeah, I bet.
but it was really hard not to because there was so much unknown. But I think my husband did a little more than I did, because I know where my brain will go, and
Yeah.
I would go down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And so we kind of tried to stay away from it. And then even there's Facebook pages for everything. So like
Right.
support groups, and even those families of conjoined twins, it's hard to be in there because, some of them don't make it and some of them do. And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to overstep and ask questions or share my joy if
Right.
people are suffering. So
Yeah.
it was a very tricky situation, but we just kind of we tried to be positive, and the mindset of, well, they're possibly not going to make it was super scary, because
Yeah.
I'm already halfway through. So am I going to make it a full pregnancy? Are they going to come early? Just all those questions of where is this going?
And did they have an answer for that, or was it literally the entire second half of your pregnancy you were just like, I don't know what's going to
Well,
happen?
when we went into the specialist, the girls were doing fine. They said, we're going to get you as far as we can in a pregnancy. You're going to give birth. They're going to be separated, and you're going to have 2 girls with just a scar. And it was going to be fine and dandy.
That's
Okay.
what they told you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That first appointment.
Okay.
And then I think about 25 weeks, our Reese ended up having an arrhythmia,
Okay.
which we were going in pretty often.
Yeah. Was it like every week?
It was probably every other week to start, and then as we got closer, it was every week.
Yeah.
Once we found the arrhythmia, I mean, there was a ton of other things, but that heart was kind of the main issue.
Mhm.
Because they were connected by the heart, or like heart to heart, right?
So, yep, from chest to belly button, they shared a liver, which was the main organ that they were connected by.
Okay.
And then the pericardium was a little bit, and then their diaphragm.
Okay.
So it wasn't like the other thing. The liver, great, it can, regrow itself, and
Yeah.
that was an easy thing to kind of not have to worry too much about and fix. But the heart is, if we can keep that beating and running, then that if it's not, then
Right.
nothing else is going to work. So
Right. Right.
that was a major concern, and it was just the arrhythmia. Then it went into 2nd degree heart block, 3rd degree, and then she was in complete heart block.
Oh.
So and at one of the appointments, they said if she was not connected to Remy, it would have been fatal. She would not have survived a pregnancy.
Wow.
Yeah. So she needed to be.
Yeah. She needed to be
Yep.
connected.
Yep.
Okay. And this was all while in your stomach.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So then as you went along, was your pregnancy, did it feel normal? Did it?
For the most part, yes. Besides, having 2 babies in your
Right,
stomach.
right.
They did kind of, I had a little bit of issues with my kidney, and they, having 2 of them in there kind of kinked my ureter, and I had some major pain that was like, maybe we have to get into a C-section early, but
Right.
for the most part, it was, I would say easygoing.
Okay.
I had just a little bit too much extra fluid, amniotic fluid too,
Yeah.
to the point of they're like, if it gets any worse, we're going to have to drain it. And every Monday I would have an appointment towards the end, and right the Sunday before, I had just major pain. The way that they were kinking my kidneys built up and they were swollen. I had that extra fluid. It was super terrible, and I had already been into the ER twice at that point, and I was like, they can't do anything for it, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kind of suffer through it and push through because I have an appointment tomorrow. I know they'll check them.
Right.
And I went in the next day and everything was back to normal,
Oh.
and
Weird.
it just kind of worked out.
Oh, good.
Which that Sunday before, we were at church and we had a couple who they're like, they came up to us after and they're like, can we pray over you? They felt that need and
Yeah.
that calling to, and
Yeah.
they did. And maybe that was kind of
Yeah.
what helped us get to that Monday and have things turn around. But
Right.
so it was pretty cool to kind of have that and just
Absolutely.
be able to get to an appointment and back to normal, and
Yeah.
less things to worry about that day. But
For
Yeah.
sure.
yeah.
So then after that, did you have a planned C-section?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I made it to 36 weeks and 2 days,
Okay.
Okay.
which,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
we were kind of surprised, but it was very, very good to make it that far.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had a classical C-section, and they did an exit procedure, which is, so my placenta was on the front of my stomach.
Yes.
And because they weren't sure how her heart would do on the outside, they wanted them connected to the placenta as long as possible.
Okay.
So they cut from, so I kind of have like a similar scar to them because of how they were conjoined.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So-
kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like it's cool that you guys share that. but,
Yes.
You know, probably not at the time.
Yeah. So they did the classical C-section, and they went to the back of my uterus to cut into it so that they didn't cut the placenta, so that they were connected to the placenta as long as possible. Because if she were to not do super well, it would be helpful to have that on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do they take it? How does that, like when they come out, how does that even work? I guess I don't
So-
even know.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting, they had a ton of people in the room,
Yeah.
which was super intimidating, but like
Yeah.
it doesn't happen very often, so they were
Right.
kind of like, who, you know, they need as many people as they can to help out.
Every specialist, just in case.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
just in case
And
anything.
they had a team for both girls, so
Got
that
it.
kind of added extra.
Yeah.
And we had a doctor, and he was like, "Can I take pictures of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Yeah.
And those are probably one of my favorite ones because it's our surgeon. He's holding both the girls, and
Oh, wow.
Wow.
they basically took my uterus out and set it on top of me. So you can see it in the
What?
picture. It's like, yeah, it was insane.
That would be so wild to see.
Yeah, it
That's
would.
so
Yeah.
interesting to me.
It was very, I that was my first C-section too. So it was just
Yeah.
like an intense feeling of they're just shimmying that whole thing out. and
Yeah.
setting it on my stomach.
I've heard it feels like really weird because, like, obviously you're totally numb, but they're like messing with
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And you can feel pressure,
Yes.
but not.
Yeah, not
Feeling.
pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so before you were able to give birth, they did say they wanted Reese to be like a certain weight before,
Yes.
right?
They wanted her to be the size of a 36-weeker,
Okay.
which she was probably behind, I don't even know, a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
She was very tiny.
Developmentally
Yeah.
behind
yeah.
Remy.
Which
Okay.
was hard to tell because they were connected. The way that they measured them was their stomachs.
Oh.
But there wasn't a clear end to their stomachs, so it was kind of
Got
like
it.
whichever tech, you know, sometimes there may be a little bit of a difference just because
Yeah.
the techs are different in how
Right.
they read it. But
Yeah. And how much did they both weigh at birth?
or
Or can you do that?
they didn't
I
do it
suppose not.
separately.
Right,
So
I
they weighed them
suppose.
as one, and they
Yeah.
were 10 pounds and 13 ounces, I think.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
10 pounds, 13 ounces.
They were big babies. Like it was a lot of weight.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then after that, what all happened and how did they eventually go, okay, now we're going to split them or now maybe, because I'm assuming they probably do at birth, some people who are, or some kids who are conjoined, they split right away.
Yep.
Okay.
I have heard that before. And I don't know if it's more of like it's
medically necessary.
Yeah, they
for
need
them to do
to
it.
quickly.
Yeah.
But the girls were doing fine. They both came out screaming and fighting, and
Yeah.
they were doing well. So they kind of said, let's, run some tests. Let's get some stuff done. I think they were probably 12 days old. They had an MRI, and then they had a surgery to insert a spacer into their side.
Okay.
Just the spacer was, they filled it up, and so it stretched their skin out so that when they did separate, they would close them with enough skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
How did they do the MRI? Did they sedate them?
They were both sedated,
Okay.
both intubated. They threw them in there and just kind of ran the
Yeah.
test.
I just imagine babies not being able, because when Nevaeh had her brain surgery, the one thing was like her moving.
Yeah.
Like
every
even a little bit.
movement. Yep.
Like you can't even
Yes.
blink.
So I actually had an MRI with them when I was, 30 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
Just to kind of see if they could get a little more information, because ultrasounds can only see so much.
Right.
Because with her heart, they can't see through the ribs, so it was a lot of, each ultrasound was probably 3 hours long.
Wow.
It was very exhausting, and I would get nauseous. I would feel like I was gonna faint. It was so tiring.
Yeah.
But they needed to do it because they needed to see where her heart was. They had to, it was kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch, because they had to measure her like input and output to make sure her function was doing well enough. Because if it's not, then, they have to take them early.
Yeah.
But then same with the ultrasound. It was, they said it was one of their longest ones, and it was tiring. It was very, very tiring. It was
I cannot imagine.
painful.
Yeah. So after they put the spacers in, then they're like, okay, we can split them and just kind of, or how did that?
So they put the spacer in hopes to, like, you need enough time to fill it, because they would come in each week and they would insert a needle and put some fluid in there. It could get up to as big of a Coke can.
Oh.
So they had to get enough space in there.
Yeah.
But so they put that one in, and then it ended up opening up. So then they ended up having to have a surgery to take it out, wait to put a new one in. And so it was kind of like that threw our timeline off. We thought they were going to be separated at a certain age, and then it was pushed to another 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, okay, well, that kind of stinks, because
They're in the hospital the whole time.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Before all of her heart stuff, they said we would be able to take them home together. You'd just get a special car seat and bring them home, come back, fill that space, or go home again. But with her heart, they tried putting temporary pacing wires in, because they needed it to kind of beat a little bit faster, just because it was, it could deteriorate. So they put those in. They ended up not really working. So it kind of, when they put those wires in, they were sticking out the side of her.
Oh.
So they're just, something connected to your heart outside of your body was insane. It's just a little device that they could turn up and down and put to whatever.
Is it like a pacemaker type, same idea?
Yes.
But
I was just going to
a
ask,
little.
maybe explain what a pacing wire is.
Yes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like a pacemaker. It's just temporary.
Okay.
So they're sticking outside of your body, connected to that generator, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
So that they could turn it on and off, pick the amount of beats per minute they want that set at. But their hearts were too close. It was kind of affecting Remy's heart rate.
Okay.
So they're like, well, and it wasn't picking up completely. So it could end up turning, like, giving her arrhythmia or AFib. And so they're like, well, let's just kind of keep it off for now. So we had to stay in the hospital because those wires were there.
Oh, got it.
Which ended up, she was not intubated until day 12 for that MRI and that surgery. And then after that, they tried to take it out.
Yeah.
And every attempt was just not successful. So they took it out. They tried a CPAP. They tried every option possible, and she just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So then they ended up re-intubating her.
Oh, okay.
So she had the temporary pacing wires and an intubation tube, and we were stuck there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were going every day?
Yep.
And like, was either of you sleeping? Because you still have 2 other kids at home.
Yes.
That you're juggling.
Yep. So
And it wasn't COVID yet.
Not quite. So we
Okay.
were end of 2019. We had them in
Okay.
November.
Yep.
So we had probably 3 months of no COVID. It was like kind of the start of it. So it was kind of like
Everybody's like, what's
Yeah,
happening?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the kids were able to come visit. We would do that on the weekends, but otherwise we kind of tried to split our time evenly. So I wasn't working. So I would go down there, drop the kids off at school. I would go down there, hang out during the day. Then I would come home when the kids are home. He was working, so he would go after work for a few hours, and then we would spend the night at home, just because they're taken care of with the nurses.
Yeah.
So we kind of were like, well, we need our rest too. Otherwise,
Yep.
we're not going to have enough
Yeah.
energy to be able to make the right decisions for them.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing to do is
Yeah.
is to actually take care of yourself, because like
Yes.
as a parent, you're like, I just want to be there 24/7, but
Yep.
I also want to be with my other kids who are at home.
Yeah.
And it's like this hard balance of like, but I also need sleep because they need me too.
Yes.
It
You
really
know?
is. It is a hard
Like a
balance.
catch-22.
Yeah.
And I feel like the person that ends up getting the short end of the stick is always yourself.
Yep.
Because you're like,
Yep.
focus on that kid, but then I got to make sure I'm taking care of my other kids and I'm there for them,
Yes.
and then taking care of my spouse. And
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
You're
it
just
was-
like passing.
yeah.
in the
Yep.
night.
Yep.
tag in, tag
Yeah.
out, high
Like,
five.
I'm here, you're the
Yeah.
Yeah.
see ya, bye. Yeah.
And I was pumping because
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, they need that.
yeah.
They are already sick. We need to make sure we do that. So I was putting a lot of pressure on there. I would be bedside the entire time I was there. And we had a couple nurses who were like, you need to go and eat. So it was,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
nice to have them there because
Yeah. Nurses are angels.
Yes.
Straight
Yes.
up angels. They do, like, they see things that you aren't seeing. Like, oh, yeah, I should eat.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's like you kind of forget.
Yeah. They like gave you that permission to
Yes.
step away.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then so she was intubated.
Yep.
And then, so then they're separate, or they finally said, okay, we can separate. them.
Yes. So being intubated for that long, she started to have some issues with her airway. So it was a battle because it turned into COVID. No visitors. The siblings couldn't come,
Yep.
grandparents, aunts, uncles, nobody.
Yeah.
And it was either mom or dad, and you are in that room and only that room, and you are in and out there.
Yep.
So it was a struggle because the girls were stable. All the elective surgeries were not happening. And we had a couple doctors who were like, well, they're stable. They don't need to be separated. And thankfully, our surgeon was looking at all of the options for her, all of the issues that were going on with her. And her airways had that intubation tube was causing an erosion in her airway. And if we didn't separate them and start working on that, she could have had permanent damage.
Wow.
So that was kind of the driving factor of like, let's get this done sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was at 4.5 months you
Yep.
said that they were separated?
Yep. 4.5 months. We were quarantined to the hospital for a week beforehand. They said, if you want to see them beforehand, you need to be here. You need to stay in this hospital and not go home until the day of surgery, which I found kind of funny because our nurses were able to go home
Right,
and come
exactly.
back. But
Make it make sense.
yeah,
Yep.
we were like, okay, we'll figure it out. We had to
Yeah.
have childcare for the other kids. And at that point, they hadn't seen them for about a month. And so it was kind of like, well, what about if one of them or both of them don't make it through surgery?
Yeah.
Don't they get the option to come and visit them and say
Yeah.
hi or goodbye or, like just have that moment with them?
Right.
So it was a very tricky time. But we made it work. And those
Yeah.
rooms are made for one patient. So we were crammed in there. We had the
Yeah.
2 girls, 2 nurses, plus us 2 sleeping on a fold-out couch
Yeah.
for a week.
Yeah. I know exactly what couch you're talking about, too.
Yep.
Yep.
I was in one of them.
Super comfy.
Nah.
Super comfy.
You're literally like, okay.
I'm trying to remember because were you able to take advantage of the Ronald McDonald House? while you were
No,
there?
because it was closed.
I was
Oh,
gonna say.
Yep. We
Yeah,
were able
you're
to
right.
when we had the girls, so we were able to stay there a bit longer than, so like once I was discharged, we spent a couple nights there, but again, we were kind of like, well, we have to be there for our other kids too, so
Yeah.
a little bit of that space was used, but
Yeah.
then it closed.
So how long was the surgery altogether?
I think it was about 7 hours, 7.5.
Okay.
But before that, they went in early they had done a dye, they inserted a dye to see kind of where each girl's liver started and end, because if they left the other girl's liver in the other one,
Right.
it would die and it could cause more issues. So
Wow.
they started with that,
Yeah.
and they would come out because they then, from when they were separated, they also did like a real pacemaker. So every time the certain specialty was done, they would come out and be like, hey, she did this, she did really good, this is where we're at. So
Yeah.
because before that, being quarantined in the hospital, you know, they prepped us on like, here's what's going to happen, how it's going to go. They sat us down and they're like, if Remy isn't doing well and Reese is like pulling her down, we are going to have to finish with Remy. We will finish separating, and then we will bring Reese back for you to say goodbye to her.
Oh my
my
gosh.
goodness.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. So they like laid it all out. And so that's where, you know, after being in there for a week, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
on that couch, we're just like emotionally drained. And then they
And then they
put
dropped
that on.
that
Yeah.
bomb
You're
on
like,
you.
oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow.
Because, yeah, they weren't sure how she would do on her own, because being connected, like their blood pressures evened each other out. One was always high, one was low, but it worked out. Remy was doing a lot of the peeing for Reese. They weren't sure her kidneys were going to turn on. They weren't sure if she was going to have to be on ECMO when she came out. So it was just a lot of unknown of what she's going to be able to do when she was on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then once they were on their own and they were separated, what happened? How did they do? How did they?
They actually did really well.
Yeah.
The first week, they were like, well, we'll just work on healing them and letting that incision
Heal.
Yeah, so they were like, she's doing great. Remy took a little bit longer to get her intubation tube out, just because her chest, they had to do a controlled break because the bones that were connected. So she was a little tight, and they're like, let's just give her a little bit.
Oh, wait, they broke?
Yeah, it was like a controlled break just from it. The way that they were connected is kind of strange, and like,
Yeah.
you know, there's bone, cartilage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they had to do a controlled break to separate them on top of like.
On top of the
I can't even
incision.
imagine being
Yeah.
a doctor and doing that.
They did simulations beforehand. They were
Really?
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
They
That's
had
crazy.
their top team on
Yeah.
both girls, so it was
And they have done conjoined before.
yes, yeah.
But not. Have they done it? I guess it's so different.
and they can't tell us everything.
Yeah,
So
I suppose.
the only reason I know about the set before us is because they gave me their information, or like kind of however they were able to do that. Like, can you give my email to her type of thing? And
Yeah.
we were able to connect, and because it was the same exact team. So
Okay.
it was really nice to be able to kind of chat with somebody who had a somewhat similar experience.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, was that extremely helpful? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Somebody who, I mean, very different experiences, but also in some ways the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just having somebody else to kind of vent to and who knew what we were going through was very, very nice.
Right.
we
Yeah.
can definitely relate. We had a few people that had reached out
Yeah.
that had,
The same brain
children
surgeries
that had,
even.
Yeah.
brain surgeries, and they're just even from the point of, we worked with Minneapolis Children's and that specific doctor, and they are amazing. Like, that gives you, because you're like, do I go get a second opinion?
Yes,
Is there a place that's better than, like, we want to bring her to the best possible specialist, and just to have so many people like, no, they're the top notch team. Like,
Yeah.
We are really blessed in Minnesota to have good doctors here and a good medical
community
Yes,
with different places in the Mayo and Children's and whatnot.
Yeah.
So then after, for a week, they were doing great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then Reese was struggling after that, and it was kind of what needs to be done first. What issue do we address? She would continue to kind of clamp down her airways, and she would not pass air.
Oh.
So she was turning purple. We were bagging her. Like, it was scary.
Yeah.
And so they decided, let's get her into the cath lab. Let's balloon her. She had a pulmonary valve that needed to be closed. There was a few issues. Her heart, actually, they compared it to Swiss cheese because she had so many ASDs and VSDs. So it was kind of like, where do you go from here?
Yeah.
And with her being in complete heart block, that means she doesn't have her AV node. So her top chambers don't communicate with the bottom. So that's why they have to get that pacemaker in, because they need it to beat correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to get it to beat at a good spot where it isn't working too hard or not hard enough, because then that muscle would deteriorate.
Yep.
So it was, how do we address each issue when they're all needed to be done?
What's the level of importance?
Yeah.
What did they decide?
They started with the heart.
Yeah.
They closed the PDA.
PDA.
She has a pulmonary valve that was
Pulmonary. I'm just curious what that.
Lots of abbreviations.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm going to Google it.
Yeah.
PDA.
And then there's so many too. I was like, they're throwing everything at you. You're like, I don't know what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
It's just
You
whatever
smile
you have
and
to
nod,
do,
like,
please do it.
Yep.
I would like her to survive. So
Right.
I'm always like, can you dumb it down a little bit for me? Because I have no idea what you're saying. Like,
Put it in English for me, please.
yeah. No, they started there, and she would go back every once in a while. I think she was in the cath lab maybe 3 times, because it was like, how do we get it to keep going the right way?
Yep.
And she didn't end up having enough space in her body to put the generator for her pacemaker. So that one kind of was like, well, we can't put it in there. So how do we fix that issue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a slow drive to get there, because she needed to grow. There wasn't another option.
She's only 5 months at this time.
Yeah.
Or 4.5, 5 months. So
There was so many issues. So after separation, which is a huge surgery, she ended up needing, it's an aorta apexy. Oh. So they had to stitch her aorta to her, I believe, clavicle or sternum. I can't remember now but they called it a Goldilocks surgery.
Interesting.
Because if they didn't stitch it just right, it could burst and she would die. And so we're like, this is on top of them being conjoined, she had to have this happen too.
Yeah.
And so then they went into that, and during that time it was also George Floyd. So we were just, they're like, if you aren't, they're like,
right
if
down
you're
the street.
if you're not staying in this hospital, you need to leave, because we are shutting it down. So all the things were boarded up. Like, it was just very interesting.
Okay, so how were you feeling? Do you remember? Like, just
I feel like I was so worried about her. Any outside factors were kind of just not there for me.
Yeah.
I just didn't
Not
really
my
like
concern.
think twice about it, because my focus was in that room and I couldn't see anything outside of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was scary going down there, because Remy was going to PT at that time.
Mm-hmm.
She came home a month after she was separated.
Okay.
And so we got them to okay it to bring her back, because they were connected for so long.
Right.
Would that help Reese at all? So we're like, well, is it safe to bring her down there with us and that kind of stuff? But we just buckled down and made it through there.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So then after the heart stuff, then there was other things, right?
Yes. So we had to wait for her she's got super sensitive skin. She's slow healing. Like, there's infections when you're in there. Just she had so many lines in her that it was impossible not to happen.
Yeah.
So her incision took quite a while to heal. And then after that healed, then we could get her trach in. So they needed to get that intubation tube out because it was causing an erosion. So I think about 10 months old, she went into a surgery for her trach, which is just a hole in your neck where they insert a tube. And then she was also connected to a vent. She was vent dependent. She couldn't breathe well on her own.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it was during that surgery or shortly after, she ended up having a stroke, which we didn't notice. Nobody noticed, because after you have your trach, you are sedated, kind of like you're in a coma. She couldn't move her body. She needed it to heal.
Yeah.
So once they took that medication off and she started to wake up, that's when we realized, like, she's not moving her left side of her body. She was showing signs of seizures. So it was just like, add that onto the list. And where do we go from here? How do we help her? What do we do next?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Did they tell you what type of stroke it was? Out of curiosity, hemorrhagic or ischemic?
They did. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. So being conjoined and having all of her nutrients come through the liver, she did not form correctly. So she has Dandy Walker variant, which her cerebellum didn't form completely. And they had mentioned to us beforehand, they're like, there's a lot of people out here who they might have a very bad one and you can't even tell. So they kind of left that up to, like, what she'll do with her life and how she'll kind of react to it. And then the stroke and the seizures kind of, like, it didn't go super well. So it left a little more damage than.
Especially at such a young age. Like, you can't be like, okay, we're going to move your fingers now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She's 10 months old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what?
Well, which is fine. You have a stroke. You're young. Hopefully your brain will kind of remap and will make
new
do
pathways.
with it.
That's what the doctors told us all the time.
Yeah.
She's young.
So we kind of were like, okay, well, let's just start treating it, healing it, getting her up, moving, whatever we can do. They did OT, PT, everything in the hospital.
Her face?
No, actually, no. I don't think it was.
Okay. Nevaeh's was like for maybe a day.
Yeah, not that we really noticed.
Okay.
But she was also she was still on the vent. She was still a little sedated. She was on a lot of medication at that time. So she wasn't doing a ton.
Right.
And then after that was kind of like, can we get her home?
Yeah.
We have her trach in. We have, I think, so then after probably not super long after, we've struggled beforehand. We struggled. She had been fed into her jejunum for that entire time. Every time we tried to go into her gut, she would be throwing up. So her surgeon decided we're going to put a G-tube in. Again, it was another fight of she needs a GJ because she's only been fed into her jejunum. She's not going to tolerate a G-tube. And
I don't even know any of these words.
So
I'm so sorry. I'm like, I need a picture.
It's bringing me back to my anatomy and physiology days in college. But I'm trying to remember. The jejunum is below the stomach.
Yes.
Is like the first part of your large intestine. Correct?
Yeah. I think it's the small intestine.
The small intestine? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
You're right. Esophagus, stomach, small intestine.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's going straight into her small intestine.
Yeah.
Bypassing
the stomach.
Okay.
Yeah. Because she had reflux. I mean, how do you know that when you're just getting fed through the G2 or the NG? So yeah, they're like, okay, we're gonna try it. And she had an NG and an NJ put in through her nose.
Okay.
So that they could attempt both.
Okay.
Attempted the G tube or the NG again, didn't work. But her surgeon was like, you know what? I'm gonna perform a Nissen, which is kind of stitching up the top of your stomach, like so it doesn't go back up.
Got it.
And he did that and the G-tube at the same time. He's like, I'm going to give her those things so she can live as normal of a life as possible.
Yeah.
We're not going to do an GJ, because then the likelihood of using that J port is, you're just not even going to attempt it, because that's what she's used to and what works for her.
That's basically putting nutrients in. Where?
So she's got a little button right
Okay.
on into her stomach.
And you just,
So comes with an extension. You have a syringe. You can put it right into her stomach.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it ended up working, which I'm super grateful
Yeah.
for, because it just made it a little easier. The G-tube is easier to change. The GJ, you have to come into the hospital every time you do it. So it was like grateful for just one more little thing that we could have a little less stress on.
Right.
Yeah.
And when they did that, they put the generator in for her heart as well. And they also were talking about putting her on the heart transplant list. So it was a lot of like, when and how do we go home on that as well?
Yeah.
Which I think after they did the few of the things for her heart and her growing and getting bigger and stronger, she kind of healed herself. Her heart was evolving. It was becoming better. So we ended up, she had a handful of heart medications that she came home on, but we were able to avoid a transplant and even being on that list. We were still followed by the heart failure team in case it got back to that point.
Yep.
But we were able to like check everything off the list, and we were about to go home, and she ended up forming an ileus, which is like a blockage in your intestines. So they canceled our care plan. They canceled everything. Like, we're going to get her through this first.
Yeah.
Which is good that we dealt with it there instead of getting home and having to go back. Like,
Right.
it was fine. But the stroke caused enough damage that her brain actually stopped growing.
Oh.
And her sutures in her brain fused early, which when you're a kid, they don't until you're a little older to allow that brain to grow and drive that growth of your skull.
Yeah.
And they told us in the hospital that she had hydrocephalus. She's going to need a surgery. Like, they didn't notice it until they kind of did a little more scans, and they said, her brain has stopped driving that growth, so we can't open them up because they won't go anywhere.
Wow.
And after that, we sat down with her neurosurgeon, her surgeon, like a whole handful of people, and kind of talked about, what our options are. And her neurosurgeon, which actually was a different one at the very beginning, he ended up moving to Michigan. So he was kind of like there for pregnancy. And at that point, he's like, you know what, we need to get her home. We need to get her in an environment with stimuli, and like, she needs to be exposed to as much as possible to see what we can get out of that brain.
Right.
Because with that stroke, you're not going to get anything out of it if you're sitting in a sterile environment.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So then did they decide brain surgery? Is that?
No.
No.
Nope, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. We were able to get her home and kind of see what kind of therapies would work at home and how we could get her growing and just like in a loving environment and around everybody. So she came home the day after her first birthday.
Wow.
Which her siblings hadn't seen her for, at that point, 8 months.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yep.
What was it this big welcome home thing, or was it like just you guys, your family?
Well, with COVID, they told us, don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
I
But
figured.
all of our family had only met her once. Wow. So we were kind of like, we will do what we can. Wash hands. If you're sick, don't come over, that kind of thing. But she needs to feel that love. So we kind of staggered everybody coming to visit her and just kind of washed hands extra. And we're like, we're going to, we want them to see her.
Yeah. I think like Nevaeh's most growth was the moment she got home.
100%.
Like she was not moving her left arm at all. at the hospital, and they're like, she may never move it.
Yeah.
We got home that night. She was like, I have my dogs, I have my family, and she was
Yep.
freaking.
That night we felt little muscle contractions.
It's being in your own environment really for healing is
so true.
so amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, we were home for I think 6 months before we ended up back there, which we had to come home with home nursing. So she needed 24/7 nursing, and I think we were able to cover a few nights and a few days. So then outside of that, me and my husband were
the caretakers. Okay.
So
you had to learn all
Crash
of
course.
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the medical company that supplies her with all of her equipment, they came out and trained us, but it was you don't know how to use it until you actually have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we didn't even know how to use her neb machine
Mm-hmm.
when she came home, and she was on a Toby neb, and we're like, I don't know how to set this up for her.
Yeah.
So it was really hard.
Yeah.
And then you're sleep deprived because we were covering the days and the nights, and we were having to stay up. So we would swap at 3 a.m. so that we could get a little bit of sleep and also be there for our other kids.
Yeah.
So it was just a
grind.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Holy
just
cow.
trying to survive.
Yeah.
Which that whole first year we kind of were in the same, like,
Right.
we're just in
Survival mode.
Yeah, just kind of flowing, going. We're like, well, we're
here, there, everywhere.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know
Not
how
sure
I
what
got
day it
here.
is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
remember driving here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But okay, so then you went back to the hospital 6 months later.
Yes. She ended up showing signs of seizures. So before that, we never saw them, like, physically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say it was after everybody got COVID and we all got sick again. That's when she started to have actual seizures.
Oh, okay.
And we were in there probably once a month.
Wow.
Just to try to stop them, control them with medications, change the medications. She was on EEGs. It was every single month we were there for a weekend, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was 4 seizure medications. And so after they were separated, we went in, we had our follow-up for a year. We saw her surgeon and we're like, here's what's happening with her. She's having hundreds of seizures a day. Wow. They were these quick jerks, but they were tons of them.
Yeah.
And he was like, he walked out of that room and he went and got his phone. He's like, I'm getting you an appointment with the neurosurgeon right now. We are going to set you up with the Minnesota Epilepsy Group, and we are going to figure this out because that's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we, I think it was within that week, we were spending a night or a few nights with the epilepsy group, and they, went over, here's medications we're going to try. These are the options that we have. And we went through those. And I think probably 6 months later, they said, she needs to have a hemispherectomy. We've tried all these medications and none of them are helping. She's on the EEG. She was continuously seizing, so more than we were even seeing.
Wow.
So they decided, this is the next best option for her.
So can you describe what that means?
The hemispherectomy is they disconnected half of her brain. So her right side
was disconnected.
Yes.
How do they do? What, like they're literally
Yes.
Do they reconnect it at some point, or how? Okay.
No.
Okay.
So they said we should do that because if that side is so unhealthy, it could bleed into the other side. So they want to protect that other side from having any damage.
Yeah.
But she has gray matter on both sides of her brain, which causes the seizures. So she will be on seizure medication, but we could probably, hopefully, stop them from constantly happening.
Yeah.
And have the medication be able to control them.
So what happens when you disconnect the right brain does that, like, that affects your memory and your speech, or right?
Yeah, which...
No, that's your
right
left.
Side
Sorry.
Yeah.
Left side does.
Yeah.
Your memory and your speech. So right side would be
Like
would it
motor
affect her
function on
left
your
side of her body?
So since she already had that stroke, she was not moving any of it.
Okay.
So when they disconnected it, she actually didn't have like a backwards trend at all.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So
There was no noticeable change.
Just her face,
just
which
the
was
face.
so funny because we didn't notice it before, and then she was.
yeah.
You could tell.
Right.
Yeah.
But with that hemi, they set it up so we had an extensive amount of PT after, so that, like when you were a baby and you had the stroke, you needed to get all that stimuli. You needed to be able to just try to get your brain to remap. So we were going to therapy 3 times a week just to see what we could get out of her and hopefully get some more movement and everything, even though it was kind of like not too bad of a backward slide. She was only in the hospital for a week.
Wow.
She came home and she was
And Halverson did this one?
actually Dr. Petronio did the hemi.
Okay.
And then everything after Halverson did.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where he comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 3 months after her hemi, she tanked. Which we were like, she is arching. We can't touch her without her crying. She seemed like in pain. She was not like, she was responsive, but also kind of not. She was just not there.
Yeah.
And so we went in. They had a head CT. They did all the tests to make sure like nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
And she was fine. All the numbers came back normal. All of her symptoms were fine. And then a few days later, we're like, this isn't her. She can't come out of it. We can't touch her. We can't move her. So we ended up going back in, and she needed a shunt. So Halverson put a VP shunt in.
Okay.
And the shunt is because she had fluid in her brain. So she can't regulate that. So
Yeah.
the shunt it'll regulate that cerebral spinal fluid for her. And it's a hard thing for her to have because it is super, super high failure rate within that first year.
Oh.
So we're like, she's already had 2 surgeries now.
Yeah.
We have to worry about that. We have to follow that closely. We have to monitor her symptoms. And she was just about to that year mark, and it failed. And it was, again, all of the tests came back normal. They did a head CT. They stuck a needle in her shunt, and she didn't flinch.
Oh.
But they're like, it looks normal. So they didn't, and they're like, well, the option here is we can open her up and we can see, because everything was flowing fine. They use a magnet to open and close it more. So they did that. They did everything, and it was fine. And they're like, the next option is you open her up and actually see if it's not working, which we're like, well, we kind of have to because she is not coming out of this.
Yeah.
You can't change it and fix it. So
we got to do another surgery.
Yep.
Holy cow.
That was her 3rd one. And it was malfunction. It was, as soon as they took it out, they're like, yep, it was sticky, so they had to replace it.
Okay.
Which resets the clock.
Yeah.
And they also said that because she had a surgery, the debris in there could also make that statistic of it failing
higher.
Higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So then she had how many surgeries has she had altogether?
I think 26.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then after this would be her 3rd
Yes.
brain
So her shunt
surgeon,
replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shunt replacement. Okay.
Yes. So, yep, hemi, placing the shunt revision. We went in, I was probably again a few months later, and she was showing similar symptoms.
Yeah.
And we went and got a head CT done. Everything looked fine. They're like, here's an option. We can tap her shunt. So they can stick a needle in there and pull some fluid off. And if that makes a difference, that's what it was. And in doing that, it caused a major brain bleed for her. So we went in on one night. They admitted her for observation. The next morning, they redid a head CT, and it showed a massive brain bleed.
My God.
Yeah. Wow. And they said if this happened in a normal person, they would have been dead. So it was having her hemi done. It didn't mix with anything that it shouldn't have. It didn't cause any more damage. It was just there.
Yeah.
So the fact that she had the hemi done saved her life with the brain bleed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
I understand. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So my question is, how do you even, so it feels kind of like, we've had a similar situation with Nevaeh where it seems like one after the other, and you're like, when is she going to get a freaking break?
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, what's your mindset through everything to stay
Yeah. Oh,
Positive.
yes. So
or were you not? It's
we definitely had our moments.
yes.
And I think we balanced each other out. When one person was freaking out, we had somebody, in control, like it's going to be
so
fine.
key. We were just talking about
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So it was a lot of that. But we're just constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, like what's going to happen next. But
Yeah.
there's always something to look for that like is a positive in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So like her having that hemi done saved her life. She doesn't have any brain damage. So we're like, just look for that little stuff. Even if that stuff actually does suck still,
Yeah.
it's a positive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's the little victories.
yeah.
I always think that there is a reason why things happen. You never know why.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more that you like look back, you're like, oh, okay. But then it's like, but looking for a positive is the only way to get through that really freaking hard time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm like, I'm going to spiral.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then I'm not there for my kid.
Yeah.
Which it's like you have to be as strong as you possibly
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
for your kid.
Yeah.
So,
And then we had the little
Your
eyes
other ones?
always looking at us like,
Yep.
what's happening with her? Is it going to be okay? And, I think that kind of pulled us through everything because you have to put a brave face on for them so that
Yeah.
they're not freaking out.
yeah.
So I think that really helped. Like if they were our first kids,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have went the same.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then, just looking back at when she came home during COVID, like maybe she needed to wait that long so she didn't get super sick and not make it, like it just, everything worked out exactly how it was supposed to.
Yeah. So after the brain bleed, then what happened after that?
Yeah. She's finally been doing a lot better.
Yeah. So did they have to do anything for that?
Yeah, they had to open her up again and drain it and
Oh, okay.
and it happened because so the hemi also kind of caused it because it was so brittle that when they pulled it off, that pressure kind of triggered that bleed.
Got
Gotcha.
it. Yeah.
So they're like, well, we'll never do that again.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've been learning her symptoms, like all of this stuff that we can shuffle around to make sure she's doing all right.
Mm-hmm.
So like constipation can cause a shunt malfunction.
What?
Wow.
Not really a malfunction, but it can throw it off.
Yeah.
Dehydration.
Mhm.
There's so many things that can happen that will make it not work correctly.
Yeah.
So we have like the beginning of the school year, she actually started in a general education class with her sister.
Oh.
First time being around like she still has her special ed teachers,
Yeah.
but she's with other kids. So we were hit hard with all the illnesses.
Yeah.
And when she gets sick, having that shunt, it just kind of, she just shuts down. So she throws up a lot. And at first when we ended up in the hospital because she got dehydrated, but we're learning like if we just get Pedialyte in her quick, stop her feeds, like we can manage her symptoms from home, and it kind of gets her through things quicker, and she's getting stronger and bigger and healthier. So just those little things.
Did she, after the brain bleed and that whole thing, did they put a shunt in right away after that? Like with the same surgery as them?
Her shunt never came out.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's been in there.
Okay.
It just has been like, how do we, once it malfunctioned, they replaced the valve.
Yep.
The valve.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
that everything has been in place and
Yeah.
steady for now.
Stable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there like a on the shunt that's doing its job? Thank God. is there a period of time that like down the road we'll have to replace that? Is there a lifespan on the shunt?
No,
or?
it can actually be good forever.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, hers right now also doesn't, we can't reprogram it. So they're talking about like there is a high possibility that it would need to be replaced because we can't reprogram it.
Okay.
But she has been tolerating it, and we've been going every 3 months, and you get to go to 6 months, then a year.
Yep.
So we're hoping that it just kind of stays that way.
Yeah.
And doesn't need to be replaced. But
Right.
yeah.
I think my best friend Rachel's sister has a daughter that has a shunt.
Yeah.
And it's like she had it when she was a baby. And so like you could see it through her head.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, she has hair now, so you can't see it. But she's had to have it replaced, and she was like puking and all of that stuff. And she goes to St. Paul. But I thought that was very interesting because I didn't know exactly why you need one.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very informational.
Yeah.
It is.
So now you're going to school to be a nurse.
Yep.
So you can
Yeah.
care for.
Yeah, because I mean, the amount of times we either don't have a nurse show up or she gets sick and we need to stay home,
Yeah.
it kind of doesn't leave a lot of time for a real job. Or if you
Right.
do have a real job, I mean, other parents who have kids with their home health care, how many times you got to call in, and jobs aren't willing to kind of keep that around, they'll find people who can show up. So
Right. And you're like, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I might as well do it. Yeah.
Right.
And you know so much, and you know her obviously
Yes.
so well. It's like perfect. So at school, she's just like, she's like learning and doing all of that. That's
yeah, she doesn't walk or sit on her own yet, so she does have a gait trainer, but she's able to get in with the kids face level and do everything with them. So she gets to go to snack time and walk to the bathroom even though she doesn't use the toilet. It's just nice for her to be able to do the normal daily stuff that other kids do in her own sort of way, but still be there.
Yeah. And how old are the girls now?
They're 5.
They're 5.
Yep.
So in kindergarten?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yep.
So preschool.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So we have a few questions for you for like advice for people going through the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is a rare thing, but like there is nothing like connecting with somebody that has like a similar situation. Like you can talk about the same things. What is like one of your biggest things like going through it? How would you give advice to somebody who is walking through it or just found out maybe?
Yeah. I would say don't lose that hope. Like there were so many times that they told us, she's never going to do this. She's never going to do that. She might not make it through this. And she has defied the odds so many times.
So
Yeah.
awesome.
So to just know that miracles do happen. Like it's out there. It can happen. So just hold on and look for that positive in each situation and just try to make it through that because it'll turn out good.
Yeah. I remember thinking when Nevaeh had her stroke, my own, like the one positive that like I just kept thinking was, okay, it's not her memory. It's not her speech.
Yeah.
Like even if it's like the hardest thing, she's 10. I'm like, what positive? That was it.
Yeah.
Yep.
She can make new pathways. She can reroute her own brain. Like but I knew like when the doctor said to me, like, she may never use her arm ever again.
Yep.
I'm like, and Nevaeh 5 seconds, like 2 months later, she's like lifting it and opening it. And I'm like, don't listen to the doctors. Like they don't know everything, of course. And I know we know that, but it feels like sometimes when they say that, it almost becomes like, oh, they've seen this before. So maybe she's never gonna.
Yes.
Maybe she's never gonna.
Yeah.
And they're so different. So you have no idea how it's going to turn out.
Yes.
It's really hard not to dwell on that. And they have to tell you that because if that does happen, they want
just
you aware. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and
Which
I think
is very...
it's important to, we've all kind of realized this is situations that we've gone through that doctors are going off of facts and science.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So we can't fault them necessarily that that's the way that they're trained and stuff. But to your point, like, hang on to the hope. we're not going to accept that.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
understand that's what your training
Yes,
is
yep.
telling you to say, but we're not going to accept that
Yeah.
because we have a higher hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you never know how tough you are or
Oh,
your
yeah.
kids
Mhm.
until they go through it and you're like, freaking wow.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yep.
have to say.
Yep.
Like, wow. What did you find to be like the most unhelpful thing and the most helpful thing that people,
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah. I
Family.
guess I would
Yeah.
just say the comments of, I don't know how you guys do it. I wouldn't be able to do it.
are you like, listen, I
Yeah.
didn't have a choice.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know. That's what we have to do. So
Yeah.
that's what we are. And it kind of like, I understand where they're coming from, but it
Right.
is
Yeah.
like, it just kind of put a bad mood in.
Yeah.
It-
It's not helpful.
Yeah.
It's almost too, we've gotten a lot of like, it couldn't have happened to a better family.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm like, what do you mean by that?
Right.
Like, because they're like, oh, well, Ethan's very good with medical stuff and this, that, and the other thing. And you're home. I don't even know. But I'm like,
yeah.
I would never want to hear that
Mhm.
because I'm like, I don't want this to happen. What do you mean?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just, it puts you in a weird,
Yep.
you're like, thanks.
Yeah.
What do you say? You
Like
know?
they mean it as a compliment, but
They
you're
do.
like, it's not helpful.
No.
Yeah.
So
No. What was the most helpful thing do you feel like your friends, family did?
I would say like showing up and not asking what we need. Our church put a meal train together for us when we were in the hospital, and they just showed up and they dropped meals off. They didn't even ask to come in. They didn't ask questions. They just were there.
Yeah.
And that was huge because a lot of people do not like to ask for help. They
I feel
probably
like-
need it, but they
Yep.
don't want to ask.
Yeah.
So
I don't know very many people that
yeah,
are like, hey, can I have help?
yeah.
You
Right.
know?
So
Yeah.
instead of asking what do you need, like just putting it out there and dropping it off and showing up for people was
Life
yeah,
saving.
it was yes,
Yeah.
it got us through it.
That was my biggest thing also. Or I sometimes maybe read the room just a little because sometimes they'll be like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yes,
You know, like not right now
yeah,
because it's very emotional.
yeah,
And sometimes you're like, I just want to be normal.
yeah,
Let me talk. Can we talk about you?
yeah, yeah.
Like, tell me about what's going on in your
Right.
life.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, because it is so big, you're like, I'm sick of talking
Yeah.
about
Create
it
a
right
distraction for me.
Yes.
Please.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was our first Thanksgiving. Like, we had them a few days before, and we come home and we don't have them with us, and it's not like your typical birth and bringing home babies. So it was like
Yeah.
you're already emotional, and then you
Yeah.
have people asking questions, and you're like, I can't answer that without falling apart.
I just had a baby too. I have a lot of emotions going,
Yeah.
and they're not here.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, I think that had to be so hard. I cried when Austin had jaundice because I couldn't hold him.
Mm-hmm.
That's triple what you,
Yeah.
like you're leaving your heart at the
Yeah.
hospital, but you also have other part of your heart at the
Yeah.
house with your
Yeah.
other kids and your
Yeah.
husband. And so that has to be,
Yeah. It was for a whole year. We just did what we could.
yeah.
Whatever tools we could do, like the kids were not able to come see them.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great team. The social worker, they put together a CD or an MP3 player, and we recorded the kids reading books, singing songs,
Oh.
talking to them,
That's so cool.
and they played it while they were in the hospital,
Oh
so they
my
had
gosh.
some sense of them.
Yeah, that is such a good idea.
Yeah.
I guess I never even thought about that. But like when you are pregnant, they say like talk to your belly. They know
Yeah.
your voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they went home like, oh no, I know who you are.
Yeah.
Even though they may have only met a couple times, like
Yeah.
the twins. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
wow. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask. I don't think you mentioned it, but with what obviously you guys went through, I mean, a longer journey than we even went through with Nevaeh, and obviously, and I think you mentioned it in the email, just the strain that it had on you and your husband.
Yeah.
Have you guys even had the opportunity with the amount of care that you have
Yeah.
to give to them have you gone to therapy? Have you talked about going to therapy?
Yeah.
How have you guys kind of worked back through
Yeah.
reconnecting?
I have not had a lot of time.
Yeah.
Well, neither of us have really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I do think like seeing a therapist would be huge for us. We kind of also put that off because it's like we're kind of just now getting out of survival mode.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's been like that's been our main focus. But I journaled a lot. I wrote everything down, and that was a great outlet for me to just jot everything that was going on in my brain down and remember things, because it's like kind of a dream, you
It's
know,
like a blur.
yeah. So it was nice to have that. And then we having opposite schedules, trying to stay up with her and then sleep when we can. We didn't see a lot of each other. So we make the most of what we can, because we don't have any other family trained in taking care of her. So it's either me or him, or if we have a nurse.
Yeah.
And so if we do have nursing hours covered, we're like, okay, we have some free time right now. We are going to drop everything and we are going to go and spend some time together.
Yeah.
And then we don't have that. We do everything we need to during the day, and then we will eat dinner together after the kids go to bed, or like some sort of like
Together.
indoor date.
Yes.
Because it's like we're just constantly running. So we try to find that little bit of time just to make sure it's just us two.
Yeah.
Because like we'll try to have conversations during the day, and
It's impossible.
4 kids, we're like, that's, they're always interrupted. So
Yep.
we'll make sure we sit, no TV, no phones, nothing. We just hang out and talk, and it's nice to put that aside.
Yeah. Ethan and I, like, because he did say ours was shorter.
Right.
And I felt the most like after, I can't even remember it, like probably just 2 years ago. So like it had been 3 years post her stroke. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I am mentally like,
Yes. Yeah.
like I have a lot of anxiety. I have a lot, like anything she says, I have a headache. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
squeeze my hand.
Yes.
Right.
Like, is your hand okay? Like we do all the neurological things, because like I immediately am like, when you go through something that is probably the worst thing that could happen, you always are kind of like, well,
Yeah.
anything could happen.
Yep.
So
Yeah. You don't want to miss something and then
yeah.
backtrack and have something terrible happen.
But then I also am like, I don't want to give my anxiety to the kids, because I know that they know that I freak out, but you know, it's a learning curve.
Yes.
But,
Oh yeah.
you know, when you hear so much, it's hard to not
Yeah. Yep.
like be panicked.
Yeah.
But wow, what an amazing story, huh, Eve?
Yeah. Seriously.
Holy cow! I don't think I have any more questions. Do you?
I don't. That was an incredible.
Yes.
You covered everything really well.
Yeah,
And
you
just
did.
Kind of the flow of kind of how everything happened, and and very inspiring story.
Was there any other outlet that you used besides journaling? Did you?
Not really, because it was
suppose you were
COVID. So we got separated from all the parents. They used to have groups there at the hospital that you could go to, and we're like, none of that was available anymore.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of, we were off to ourselves, and we did utilize our church a lot. They, after the girls were born, they said, we want to pray over you again.
Yeah.
We had a group of them, and one of them was like, I'm seeing dragonflies. Does that mean anything to you? And I was like, I don't think so. It doesn't really ring a bell. Like nothing is popping up in my head. And now, just a few months ago, we found it's a respite home, and it's called Crescent Cove, and they have dragonflies all over. And that has been like, we've only done one stay, but it has been huge for us.
Wow.
Like we hate leaving her. It is really hard because it's like not natural.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've realized like we also need that. Our kids also need that. They are missing out on a lot of activities because our main focus has been her health and getting her to where she needs to be. And it's just insane to like look back at that and be like, that she knew about that and was trying to tell us about it, and we didn't get to utilize it until now, but it's been a lifesaver, and they're so good to her. It's like her own little camp that she gets to go to.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
it is just it allows us to help our other kids and give them the experiences that they've been missing out on.
That's so awesome.
yeah.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, just hearing the way that you processed everything and just the way that it's so hard to create a balance
Yeah.
to make sure
Yeah.
you're taking care of yourselves and your
Yeah.
other kids. And so good on you guys for
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
having all those pieces together.
We've got a lot of support, so that is super helpful. And so that's where we're like, whatever we can do for people, families going through anything similar, or anything hard in general, is we just want to be able to give back, because a lot of people have helped us. So
Yeah.
Same.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Such an inspiring story.
Yeah.
And,
Appreciate it.
I would love to meet the kids at some point.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
point in time.
I
It's such a cool story.
Absolutely.
And you guys will be in our continued prayers, and I'm sure there's going to
Yeah.
be a lot of people that are going to be inspired
Yeah.
by this story of hope
Yeah.
through trauma.
I hope so.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, guys.
And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.